Welcome back to the King's Corner, the place for all things Bethesda. I am the KingFanMan. Fallout 76 having no NPCs has caused quite a stir in the gaming industry. In fact, it is very unique to say the least. There are very few games, if any, that have tried it. If you know of any, please put them down in the comments. Whenever something that unique is tried, it is going to cause a stir. Now, me personally, I have talked about it several times. I like the change. I like that they tried something innovative. And I think it feels very Fallout-y to go out in the world. Now, some have called it empty. And this is what I believe they're talking about, an empty world. That it feels, that it has that empty feel. Because they are not talking to people like they're used to in a game. But yet there's things to do everywhere. But it's so different, they think it's empty. Well, the question I have today is, why did Bethesda choose to put no NPCs in Fallout 76? Whether you like it, love it, or hate it, why did they choose something this unique, this different, to put in this game? Now, real quick before we answer that, because I hear it a lot, I get bored with the holotapes. We need to be able to talk to a person because we're so used to video games interacting with a character, with somebody we can see. And I understand that. That's what we're used to. Not doing that is so different. It is so unique. My contention is, especially in a Fallout game, a post-apocalyptic game, especially with the story, which is what we're about to get into as one of the reasons, this gives this game such a unique feel that I love the feeling of not having NPCs. But again, that's a personal preference. It's a personal preference for someone else to say, I need someone to look at, to listen to, instead of a holotape to listen to. And it's a personal preference for me to say, well, I like the feeling of having no one out there, of being out there in the world alone. That makes me feel more like a Fallout game. So it's really silly for people to get angry at a game for one way or the other. It's a personal preference both ways. But again, the point of this video is, why did Bethesda choose this way over the traditional way? And I believe, again, there are two main reasons, and I think you're going to understand it more at the end of this video. I hope everybody will that takes the time to watch this video. Okay, the number one reason I have talked about several times, and it is lore. It is the time period that this game is set. It is set 25 years after the bombs are dropped. Vault 76 is one of the first vaults in the Fallout world to open. That means there are almost no humans in the United States left alive. In West Virginia, there would be literally almost no one, and the ones that are alive, we know now, have been plagued by a disease, and they are known now as the Scorched, which is going to be a main part of this story. So there are literally no normal human beings alive. They were either killed by the bombs or they have been attacked by this deadly disease. So, as I've said many times, lore would dictate there can't be any humans because the vaults haven't opened yet. They were either killed by the war, by the bombs, they're in the vaults, or they've been plagued by this disease. Again, before I move on to the next one, Bethesda chose to put this game at this time period. Bethesda also chose to cause a disease to be a part of this main storyline to infect the rest of the humans that take up West Virginia. In other words, Bethesda could have had a couple of humans left in West Virginia. Bethesda could have had the overseer there to talk to. So when I say lore dictates there can't be any humans, there could be a human or two, but Bethesda chose to make it where there are none. Another choice by Bethesda. Very interesting. That brings us to number two. There has to be a reason why Bethesda chose this time period, why Bethesda chose to make the story something where it took up the rest of the humans, why the story took the overseer away, why the story absolutely made it where there are no humans at all, why the time period would be where there are no humans at all. Why would Bethesda choose to make a game that is so absolutely unique? In the last video I talked about the impossibility of them pulling off making their engine into a multiplayer game. And I want to expound on that just a little bit more. Many have talked about how hard it would be for their game engine to do multiplayer. One of the main reasons is Bethesda's game engine was built around single player, meaning everything was centered around one person. Every quest line, everything was focused on one person. Everything followed one person. They had to totally remake how the engine worked.
Like nothing was developed with multiple players in mind, so all over the code there's, what is the player doing, right? I want you to give a quest to the player, or well, it's like, well, that has to go. I guess the one way to look at it is the entire engine was based around a world with a player. Now that has to sort of change to, you need to base it around the player who could be in any world. So just that statement alone implies many, many, many changes. It's like the game doesn't load except around one player.
So as you know, they took the Quake engine, which is a multiplayer engine, and they combined the Quake engine with Bethesda Game Studios engine, the original creation engine, and made this hybrid engine. The engine that runs Fallout 76 is not the same engine of Fallout 4 at all. This is a totally new engine. People that say this engine is what made Fallout 4, that's totally wrong. This is an absolute new engine. Number one, it's got all new parts, number one, to the Fallout 4 engine. In other words, BGS's part of the engine has all new features. It has 16 times better graphics, it has better lighting, it has better rendering, you can see further in it, it has all kinds of new upgrades in just the Bethesda Game Studios part of the creation engine. Then you combine that with the Quake engine and you have this new hybrid crazy Frankenstein engine. This is the Frankenstein creation engine now. The impossible engine. And this is not what YouTubers say. This is what the people in the industry said. It was impossible to do this because they took an engine that was focused on the single player and turned it into a multiplayer engine. Now, people gripe about all the bugs that are in Fallout 76. Well, again, of course there's going to be bugs in this. Number one, it is a multiplayer game. Any multiplayer game is going to be buggy. We looked at World of Warcraft in the last video that I made. World of Warcraft still today, 14 years after launch, still is plagued with bugs that they cannot get rid of. So of course Fallout 76 is going to have bugs just being a multiplayer game. But this is a multiplayer game that they have. This is a multiplayer engine that they have combined with a single player engine. So they are going to go through some growing pains, definitely. Now this brings me back to the second reason why there's no NPCs. You say, why did you go into all of that about the engine? Because of all the difficulty they had making multiplayer, and I haven't gone into everything yet about making the multiplayer work, just getting the multiplayer to work in this engine. If they were to add NPCs into this game, the bugs and problems would literally go out the roof. In other words, it would make things 10 times as difficult. And I do believe they are working on that, but they're trying to get the base game stabilized first. You see, people aren't even happy with the base game yet. Can you imagine what they would be if they put the NPCs in right now? So why are NPCs not in the game right now? Well, number one, I believe they've got them waiting to go in the future. Let's go back to the lore issue. They've got the vault sitting there waiting to open. And I believe in one of those vaults, or at least in future content somewhere, there's going to be slowly, I don't believe there's going to be a bunch, it may be one or two, there's going to be an NPC here or there to start with. They're going to start slow, but Bethesda's going to start easing in some NPCs to see how it works in the system, to see just how buggy it is, to see if it works. And that's what they're working on right now. They're working on the technology. So they're going to allow the lore to line up, and they're going to allow the technology to get here. So do we have the patience to wait on the lore to get here and the technology to get here? Well, I do, but I don't know if everyone else does. So there is the simple, honest truth that not many people will tell you. Bethesda is working behind the scenes on trying to get the NPCs to work in this game, and they're going to try to have them in time for when it lines up with the lore of this game. Now, I think they were hoping the fans would love the base game, and then they would really love it when they introduced the NPCs, but it's not working out that way. I think Bethesda had more faith in the fans than we had faith in Bethesda, and that's a shame. Now, we have just skimmed the surface of this topic. We'll get into it more at a later date if you want to, but I am so glad you stopped by the King's Corner. I hope you understood what I gave. We will actually talk about this more on the podcast tomorrow, so I hope you stop by the KingCast tomorrow. Be sure to check all my links down below, and I hope I will see you out in the waste of West Virginia. I am the KingFanMan. I'll see you guys later.